Hello everyone and welcome back to the final session of Edutech 2021. I would like to introduce the panel, which is entitled Supporting the Emotional Wellbeing of Students and Teachers in an Online Environment. And for that, I would like to firstly introduce the moderator, who is Catherine O'Farrell, Group Head Bloom Education, to start the discussion. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and hello everyone, and welcome to our final session. It's an absolute honour to be moderating a panel of really excellent practitioners who we've got here today. We have Louise Dawson, who is our Head of Inclusion for DC and a Special Assessor with the BSME Network Lead, Daniel Sobel, the founder of Inclusion Expert, and Susie Hache, who is GEM's Lead Counsellor. So a really stellar lineup for today, and we've got some really interesting questions that are talking about a subject that I think is really close to everyone's heart at the moment. Teacher and student wellbeing has been a huge topic of discussion over the past year, and one that is really valuable to be at the fore of people's minds. So thank you guys for joining today, and I'll begin, Daniel, with a question for you, please. What do you think are the inherent limitations and barriers for tech-based learning, especially for our more vulnerable and challenging students?
I think a few of them are fairly self-evident, being addicted to screens, for example, and for children to hide away on the screen. And it can also promote a sense of isolation. I think that those are something which probably most parents are aware of, right? I think that the general goal of inclusion, one of the bigger goals of inclusion, especially for the most vulnerable and the most challenging students, is to enable children to feel like they belong. And I think that is precisely where the sense of distance from others and that isolation can really hit, feeling like you're not part of other humans. There's the relationship which is breaking down between teacher and child, the isolation of sort of staying at home, possibly in their room behind a screen, and so on and so forth. I think there's a couple of others that's specific to do with learning, and that learning, we think of learning as a sort of isolated phenomena, but actually I think that learning can impact how children feel. And here's an example, is how do we check that they really understand what's going on? And actually, by sort of distance learning, there is a potential flaw in not being able to check that a child is actually getting what we're doing. And the child can feel more and more like, I don't get it, I don't belong, I don't see what this is about, etc., etc. So that can. I just mentioned one other thing, and that is that sometimes within technology, using technology, what we can end up doing is setting a similar task. It seems very similar, or alternatively, even worse, is it seems very different. But actually, in reality, what you mean is read that bit and then answer that bit. And it can be extremely repetitive, even though from the perspective of the teacher, it seems innovative and creative and so on. From the child's perspective, it could feel quite repetitive. I think within that, in skills development, there is things like children having options when they're on screens to sort of stick with what they know. It's safety bubbles, right? And actually, learning happens when you push the boundaries of that safety bubbles. So creating an environment where they're doing the same thing and the same thing and the same thing can actually be a way of reinforcing that this is what safety means. And when it comes to sort of reintegrating back into non-technology-based learning, it can be a problem to do the stretch and challenge. I think there's a lot more to say, but I think I'll pause there.
Yeah, I think for sure the point you were making about the distance, the gap, where we're missing out on all the nuances of interpersonal communication, where you can read a student when they're in front of you. You can tell by the way they're sitting or the way they're interacting with you, kind of generally how they're feeling. That's definitely, a lot of that is being lost. Susie, I'll come to you. How would you describe students' mental health at this point of time? I know you've seen a lot of changes in students' presentation over the past couple of months.
Well, yes, thank you very much for asking that question. It is true that as counselors, we are really feeling overwhelmed. I think that what has happened is really a big number of, I think that some of them were already, especially those who are passing their board exams, but definitely this year it's across the school that we see that children are anxious, there's social phobia, we have some panic students, we have some who are stressed, some who don't know about their friendship, but they're going to have that because they've not been to school, low self-esteem, low self-confidence. So we have dealt with quite a lot. It's the first time for me after 22 years in the same school and in Dubai, I've seen psychosis, suicide ideation. This is terrible because unfortunately in Dubai there is no place yet for now. They're full for our children to go to. If there is somewhere to refer, hospitals are really full. So it's quite difficult, and I think that many of the providers are finding it very difficult to support the need of the community.
I think we're seeing that in teachers as well, aren't we? Louise, yes. You want to do something?
So I think when Daniel started off, he talked about the well-being of the children within the group and the relationship between teachers. So I think that is missing, which is increasing the decreasing the well-being of children. But I think that I'm quite fearful that we're losing children. So the children who are committed to working at home only. So in Dubai at the moment, we've got different schools are doing different things, but generally we're blended. We have half the school in and half the school out, or some are in and some are out. But there are some children who we haven't actually seen face to face since last March. And the children who are staying at home, if we're struggling to get all of the children to be on camera. So the camera might come on, we may feel like we've got engagement with the child, we may be having some work submitted, but we may not have physically seen the child or on camera. So the technology, whilst it's brilliant because we can zoom into people's homes and we can zoom into children's face to face, we do struggle to then make sure that we are capturing all of our children. And I think right now across the world, I don't think it's a Dubai thing or a UK thing. I think across the whole world, we need to be really careful about losing some children, because we know that there are situations where we can lose physically, emotionally, mentally, completely, literally lose a child. And I think that's my biggest concern at the moment. Technology does help because we can catch up with the majority of our children, but the technology is hindering us because we can't see all of our children.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a big barrier, isn't it? It's a huge gap. We're hearing that across the conference. As I was listening to other sessions throughout the day today, it seems to be a common thread across schools, across countries, across different approaches. It's all over, and attendance particularly seems to be dropping consistently across schools, and it's highly concerning. Daniel, I'm going to come back to you. And have you seen any advantages of tech-based learning for more vulnerable students? Like what is working well and what can we build on?
Well, I think, in general, just to sort of summarize, if I may, just before we go into this, what's been said is that when you have purely technology-based focused learning, it needs to somehow be accompanied with with advice and support for how to maintain and develop human relationships as well. And I don't think that's that hard to do. I just think that we're not used to it yet, and we don't really have like a code of practice, the basic 5 things to be doing. So here's a few major advantages that we could cash in on in terms of the technology. If lessons are recorded, it means that children can listen to them again and again and again. And actually learning through repetition, especially when it comes to language acquisition of learning new words and curriculum points, it's actually really useful. It's really excellent. You don't get to do that in a normal lesson. I think if we can use technology to promote social interactions in managed ways, it don't have to be huge interactions. A good example, one of my son's teachers spoke to him for a minute at the end of a lesson. Actually, that was probably easier for the teacher to do because she didn't have to manage a whole class of students who wanted her attention as well. And it was really nice for my son because he had an eyeball to eyeball contact just for a moment. It was really nice. So actually it can be a big advantage. There's also, I think, just two other points just to mention. With regards to mental health around learning, a lot of learning is very focused on outcomes. So we want to make sure that the children have achieved a certain amount, have attained a certain amount, did they pass? Whereas actually with technology, we can really focus on process, and processes where it helps all children. You know, we're less focused on did they achieve the test, tick, or are they going through a learning process, a learning experience, as it were. And just perhaps one other thing, it's actually quite easy to individualize and personalize on technology slightly more. I mean, it's hard to go over to a child and say, you know, well done, or I like that, and that's very good. And this sort of little prompts that you can get, that human interaction gives. But at the same time, sort of making up for that, you can have a lot more sort of easily individualized. There are so many programs out there that help individualize your lesson and things to do. You have such a range of things just because of technology. Can you imagine in the old days when you'd made your lesson and you've got, you know, a task that you've made and you had to go off to the photocopier and, like, you know, hand everybody a sheet. Can you imagine that now you can take that one exercise and do it in 17 different ways just by pressing a button? And there are things like that which are amazing, which we can really cash in on.
And speaking to that, I see you nodding, Louise. What kind of programs are you using? Have you got any specific ones that you've found really effective, or like you were talking about touch typing and things like that?
Yeah, so going back a little bit and overlapping on what Daniel was saying, I think that, so for our children with additional needs who are introverts, being at home and being able to be on screen and do the learning, but being able to message the teacher privately with a question or with a concern without the rest of the class knowing that that's going on is also a bonus of the technology. Being introvert and being away from those social interactions may have long-term impacts, because we know they need to socialize in order to be successful later on in life. But I think for the moment we're okay. So my 7s, 8s and 9s, my age 11, 12, 13s, that are able to just focus on the learning, communicate directly with the teacher without fear of embarrassment, without fear of bullying, without fear of ridicule, that's actually quite a nice byproduct of it for some children, not all children. So in terms of technology that we're using, so I'll just correct, at the beginning you said that I worked for DC, and I don't have that honour. I work at JC, Jumeirah College.
Oh, my apologies.
To correct that, because DC haven't employed me, so I think that they might be a little bit offended, and I don't want the head of inclusion to be upset. So at JC we use Toot, which is a method for communicating concerns and worries and straight through to our team of pastoral care. Obviously we're using email, we're using Hangouts, we've got the full Google suite and we've got the full Teams suite. So we've got many different platforms in which children can communicate with us, and obviously we're checking on that attendance, and all of that attendance stuff is all still going on by hour. I know that we worked together earlier on a presentation. Susie, you work with Yoo-Hoo and with Upstrive. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we just introduced that now, and it was really a very good tool made by one of our ex-GEMS colleague, who's Linda Bonar, who has actually written the book Press Play, and she's so on well-being and on mental health. And this is really a message. For example, every learning manager, heads of years, can message something in the morning to her class, the class, and the students can engage. It's very easy to see the child's emotional temperature, and then we can individually, sorry, I speak French.
End of the day.
Pinpoint who is the one who needs support, and then forward that to the school counselor. I see everything as a school counselor, but some others cannot see everything. And there's also a private chat, which is absolutely safe, and that has helped so many students. And students who were not even daring to see the school counselor has really developed an amazing relationship. And I can't speak enough about that. And also what is good about these kind of tools is also that helps to put your pass whatever was in your past. And if you want to put some questions or any post related to the results that you had in your past, or the census that we have to do for the KHDA, what are the outcome, we can relate to that. You can really analyze that. It gives you statistics year by year or across the school as what you want, and it has been really very successful. Very successful.
When you say pass, do you mean the GL pass assessment?
Yes,
People choose to self-install. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
So you can enter all of that data. Is that into the Upstrive or into the Yoo-hoo?
Upstrive.
It goes for both.
And it also goes for Pulse. Pulse is another tool which is similar, but one does more than the other. Every school needs to look into what they want to. But I just want to come back to what you said, Louise, about this communication with teachers. You're so right. That's something that I felt that teenagers were having difficulties. You know, the ones who are on year 11, 12, and 13, they don't want to disturb the teacher, prefer to go outside for clarification. That just that push. And I really screened all my year 12, 11 and 12s, and really encouraged my students to engage with the teachers and ask the teachers to engage themselves with their students. That really helped, because they didn't want to disturb the teacher after certain hours, and that has really helped. So because they don't come to school, so we needed to engage them in one way or the other. And just to say that it's okay, that helped a lot.
Yeah, that is really important, isn't it? To let them have the knowledge that they're not on their own and that they're in it together, and other students and are facing similar challenges. We set up a number of kind of breakout rooms for the kids to go to independently without supervision, just to have that kind of ability to have almost the break time kind of experience where they're just hanging out with their peers, and it's not structured, it's not under the duress of having to complete certain tasks. It's just to be and have a chat like you would in a coffee shop or in the schoolyard. It's something they're really missing.
And you know, just on that, it's true, because I have I'm sorry if it's not negative, but I have these nerds who are so aware of the technology. I'm really blown away by them because I'm so bad. And I just invite them during break time, and it's just to help their social skills. And they're just speaking about their discovery of things like that. And it's just to socialize, actually. But they don't know that actually they're socialized. It's just to speak and to be able to take your turns and things like that. And it's just providing, actually, I
actually think our teenagers are much more tech savvy than most of the teachers that we have. And they are very familiar with communicating over technology, what with the Xbox and with the PlayStation and all the other, games that they play, anime, all of these things, Minecraft. They're so used. They've been doing it. I mean, if I think of my son's 23. And he's always, from a very young age, from 10, so for over 15 years, he's been communicating with all his friends. So I think of my son, my middle son is in the UK at university, but obviously locked down, just like everybody else, in an apartment on his own. And I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "No, Mum, it's great, because everyone's online with me all day long." And I think actually he feels more connected to his friendships than he was before, because they're here. He's got friends in the UK, in Canada, in China, in England, in Dubai, all over the world, and probably not getting a lot of sleep, but because all the time, different time zones. But I would say he's probably feeling more connected with his friends, but less connected with his learning. So, Daniel, did you want something in there?
Yeah. Just the experience with my eldest, who's 8, and he is resistant about writing anything, which is not uncommon with boys of that age. And bearing in mind we're based in England, so we kind of get children to write way too early before they're developmentally actually capable of writing. So that's partly to do with it. But so it was an interesting point, was that if you set him a task to write 5 sentences about something, he's quite resistant about it. But if you get him to make a PowerPoint about something, he made a PowerPoint about, subatomic particles or something. And he made 20 slides. And it's remarkable. If you think about the learning and the ideas and the comprehension, and actually the quantity of writing and so on and so forth, but get him to write anything more than 2 sentences with a pencil, he doesn't want to do it. And so I think that we can sometimes get caught up in in the organization of learning, like well, print off the sheet and then do this and then do that. It's all a lot of organizing, and what we're missing out is the opportunity to actually really process and learn, and this is the word process again, but actually go through the brain activity of learning, which I think technology is amazing for.
It's about moving away from the traditional methods, isn't it? So I had a girl today, she's in year 8, so she's 12, 13. And all of the reports from teachers, so we're going through the early identification stages. I'm pretty confident she has dyslexia based on a standard score of 80 in her spelling, when she like 112, 115 on her non-verbal. So the teachers have all reported to me that when we ask her to make a video, she's phenomenal. She's right up here. When we ask her to do a PowerPoint, she's right up here. But as soon as she goes into assessment, where she has to handwrite, her language completely dumbs down. And why is that happening? And I said, because she knows she can't spell the word. So instead of saying trachea, she'll say windpipe, and she can spell windpipe. She can't spell trachea. So you're giving the marks based on that higher level language. She can't use it, so she uses lower level language and then doesn't get the marks. But we're really doing her a disservice. And it's the difference between, so I'm like, don't do an assessment, let her type it, let her record it. Get away from this traditional education. I think we may, if there's enough of us keep talking about it, we may shift away. But for the well-being of her, being able to make a video, being able to make that PowerPoint, being able to do that screencastify, she's flown. And then we've come back into school and boom, back down again. And it's been very remarkable, which is why we've had an increase in identification and referrals to the department. Phenomenal. But phenomenal.
The problem also there, Louise, it's the parents not always understanding that, because they're also very traditional minded. So if they can understand what Daniel is just saying about the process, what matters is to acquire the skill. How doesn't matter as much as they acquired, and that's what we want. And the thing is also, alongside by teaching the students, we also need to educate the parents.
And in actual fact, that child is probably much more highly talented at problem solving and critical thinking than her peers, because she's being forced to do it all the time. And teachers sometimes don't recognize that is the skill she's developed, because of the barrier that we as educators sometimes place in front of them. And on that then, do you think that now that we've had such a revolution in the educational industry, do we need to change the definition of inclusion? And I'll leave that open. Anybody do we need to kind of have
we ever defined inclusion? Have we ever actually?
Thanks, Louise.
Start with.
I agree with you.
What is your ideal version of inclusion? What would it look like?
Inclusion is different. If we're talking within education, is different in every single setting. So I don't think we have one definition to change for a start. Daniel?
I wrote an article about 6 months ago, which basically really divided the readership between absolutely loving it and absolutely hating it. And so I said, a little bit tongue in cheek and a little bit provocatively, and I don't fully believe this, but I sort of said something like, "Oh, with COVID, we're all children of inclusion now," as if to say we all have anxiety now, we all are isolated socially, we all have issues. And the reason why I tell you why I do believe that is because it's really brought to the fore just how fragile we are. And the reason why I don't believe it is because we've always been human and fragile, haven't we? And so what's different about that? In that regard, if inclusion means, well, we only deal with children who have anxiety, well, actually, all children have anxiety at some point. That's a human experience, right? And it's the same with teachers. We're like human. So yes, if what inclusion means is we're more compassionate to the fact that we're human beings and we all have needs, and that's okay, and that we can design an education system both for teachers and children and parents that somehow is compassionate about that point, then I'm happy with that definition. I could say a lot more about it. As you can see, I'm worked up about this point. I'll pause here.
But it is a pertinent point, and you mentioned there about the teachers. Like, how are we really considering the impact of the whole shift and the isolation that it's caused for teachers?
It was that has been terrible, really. I think that first of all, it was a lot of learning for quite a few, because you know the different schools are using different platforms and not everybody was aware of, or things like that. Then it's also the amount of work to shift, exactly like Daniel said, from paper pen to something completely different, and to upload and all that. So, but now that it is up and working, I think it's better. But I think that at the same time, we do so much more that the workload has, I think that the teachers are really feeling tired of this, that this hybrid, the blended ways of teaching, it's very tiring. Really, and some of them are really saying, I prefer to work from home than to be at school, because at least we have one or the other. But both of them, it's very, very tiring. And some of them, they do feel that they neglect the children, that, oh, they have to look on screen, then they don't see what's happening in the class, and it's taking a toll on them. Then it's true that many schools, we are really talking about teachers' well-being, but it's much more, you know, last week, just in one of our sessions, one of them spoke about, oh, we leave our teachers go 30 minutes early, or the last bit. Fantastic. Why not? Why not? And it's not about equity, about give something else to others who are taking the school bus. Don't give them covers or something like that. But I think the workload has really increased.
Yeah.
I think so
there
really.
has been that whole process of learning. I remember when we first went into lockdown in the UAE in March the 5th, it was basically go home, learn how to use technology, because in 2 weeks' time you will be teaching online. And so everybody had to get to, and spent the entire Easter, it was a forward Easter break, getting to grips with that. And I think, again, that's across the world. It's not just the UAE, but we've gone back. I don't think there is possibly a member of staff in any school in any country that thinks they're doing a good job. And I think that's really, when we're so passionate about children, and we are passionate about their well-being, and we are passionate about progress, and we are passionate about them making the best of themselves, when we know that the children are not there, we take that really, really personally. Teachers are not in this for the income. Teachers are in this for the outcome. And none of us feel like we have good outcomes at the moment, and there is nothing we can do about it, but it doesn't stop us beating ourselves up. I don't think I'm the best head of inclusion. I certainly don't think I'm the best line manager, and I don't even think I'm the best parent right now. We're all doing our best, and acknowledging that is key. Technology has loads to put into that. It was really great on Mother's Day to be able to put my child in the UK and my child in Dubai and my mother in the UK, and to put us all on a Zoom for Mother's Day was wonderful. Probably more connected, but actually not being able to do that stuff is also really hard. And I think we have to acknowledge that. So again, pros and cons in everything we do, but I don't think any of us are feeling like we're doing a good job. And that will come across to the children as well.
And I also think that we need to learn to say no. And really be able to have some me time. It's very difficult. I totally agree. I'm the first one guilty of that, because as a counselor and all the time WhatsApp from parents, students, or what, even a weekend or evenings or late nights, most of the teenagers is more late nights that you are available, and they know that they can count on you, so they really take that up. So
technology coming into our homes has been very, very, very invasive. And like even now it's 5:30, we're all in our homes. We finished our day at work and we're still going, and we're still trying to promote the good fight. But yes, having students and parents in our homes for afternoon, evening meals. So like we have parents' evening for us is after school, and we're allowed to come home and do parents' evening from home, which is great. But we start again at 5 o'clock and we go through to 9 o'clock in our homes. And it's really hard to shut the laptop and turn off. And that business is now in our dining rooms or in our bedrooms or in our, for me, I'm lucky I've got a little bit of an office, but having work in my home has also been very invasive in terms of my own ability to work out what's going on with life. That I have no work-life balance. It's all work at the moment, and I think that's the same for everyone. It's not just me. I think it's across the globe, because work is in the home now. It's not just I can think of engineers doing the same thing. I can think of bankers doing the same thing. I can think of insurance people doing the same thing. It's a global well-being issue.
I think just to add to that, I think there's something psychologically exhausting about being online with people. Now, my wife and I had a dinner with friends of ours online You know, they were there. We had, like, we made dinner, they made dinner, we were on Zoom. I'm sure people have tried this. After 20 minutes, I was exhausted. That's partly because I'm not used to just being looked at and speaking directly in this way. You know, in a normal conversation, I might glance away, might take a pause, you know, and, you know, it's very, very difficult to sort of maintain this artifice, this way of communicating. And I think it drains and drags a part of us, which is quite difficult to touch. And we don't notice ourselves becoming exhausted and tired and weighed down by it, because it doesn't obviously appear that way. But I think there is a sense that we have. It's interesting because, you know, we didn't choose all of this. This has happened to us, and we're still trying to, and partly what I guess this conversation is, trying to wake up to what's actually happened, and how is this affecting us. And so I hope that we won't rest on our laurels and think, right, you know, this is never going to happen again, so we don't really need to face these questions, but rather we say, right, okay, what have we learnt here? What are the best of what we can do? And we come up with some sort of protocol, you know, like when delivering a lesson, we need to make sure that we check in with a couple of children. We need to make sure that we focus in on language. We need to give them different options. There's some sort of like guidance, golden rules of how to do this, I think would be useful for everybody. If we could work on that together, that would be interesting.
And you know, Daniel, we are right, because also for us as counselors, it has been very difficult because we have face-to-face, and to learn to work on Zoom and see our students, and then when they are not coming on camera, how can you see the body language? I know many of the providers here, clinical psychologists, you know, had a big turn. In fact, it was very difficult. For myself, I did another course because I was not used to this, like telephone counseling and all. It's completely different than what we are used to. And in order to give justice to our job, well, I did that because I was not good at it. And I took 2 months to learn that. And then again, as we speak, nobody asks you to. School has definitely not asked anything, but it's just what you know that, okay, I'm missing this. What can I do about it?
Yeah, and it hasn't been a choice. I find myself lurching. So I think I put a post on LinkedIn the other day about inclusion is actually quite a lonely job. So when we're working with a child, we are working with their struggles and their challenges. When we're talking to the parents for the first time, we're identifying and naming those struggles and those challenges. And to begin with, they might not like us very much, but they do like us in the end because we help to make that success. So the child doesn't like us at the beginning, but they do at the end. The parents don't always like us at the beginning. Our teachers, you need to do differentiation. You need to read this extra paperwork. You need to learn more about OCD. You need to do this. So we put on the teacher, so they don't always like us very much. Then we've got management. We've got quotas to make. We've got rules and laws to fix. We've got new light switches to put in and ramps to put in. So they don't always like us because there might be a monetary or a time effort going in. So actually, it can be quite lonely. And I find myself some days just going from a negative conversation with a member of staff to a negative conversation with a child to a negative conversation with a parent and it just seems sometimes we just got to go, whoa, enough. And I've actually started putting in breaks in my day now because we were doing back to back and you know, even between conferences I've put in an hour between having conversations in the evenings that I couldn't cope with it, and again, so that's putting in the protocols, putting in the rules and knowing what you can cope with yourself, because if we burn out, that's not good for anyone, parents, children, staff, conference leaders.
If we cast our minds back to March and April of last year, when we were all thrown into this whirlwind of innovation, change and forced adaptation, and we launched the Inclusion Wellbeing Forum, and literally people jumped on it for a sense of connectivity and a sense of wanting to know that they aren't the only one sitting at home going, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I have no idea. Does anybody else know? And having that connectivity where everyone is saying, well, nobody really knows. We're all in it. We're all struggling.
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. And now I think we really need to take the time to slow down and to, as you're saying, Daniel, start looking at what worked and equally what didn't work, so we can eliminate that, but looking really at what has been working. I think a lot of schools are still very much in the frenzy of change, trying to find what's best, but it might be find what's working. And on that note, what if you could have one piece of tech to support your role at the moment, what would it be? And I'll leave that open. Who would like to? Anybody can contribute.
Hardware or software, or any tech.
Can I tell you a fun piece that I've discovered? And this is entirely because my son said to me, one of my children said to me, if I do 100 homeworks, can I earn a virtual reality headset? I was like, sounded good to me. I said, fine. Not really knowing how much that was going to cost or what would happen in the end. But anyway, I found myself, in having done this, surprisingly, I now had to buy this thing called an Oculus Quest. I can't show it actually on the screen because it's
maybe if you hold
it.
Oculus Quest. Yes. Now, using that, I can actually go on. I mean, it's a high quality virtual headset, right? Costs £400-500 or something, and I can go on holiday. I can literally be on a beach. And just enjoy being. I can go diving. I can go into space. It's really remarkable. Anyway, I've been going on a daily hike somewhere special in the world. I've loved it. It's absolutely. It's slightly addictive, but I really love it. So that doesn't help education. Well, I think it might do.
Does it? It does. Yeah.
Learn a lot about the world. Surely, just make that sound better than it is. Right.
Geography.
Absolutely. It sounds amazing.
I think I want to take all technology away right now, Catherine. I think it just all needs to disappear. I just want to be in front of a class of kids. What can I not do with that? Well, look, it's got to be the laptop, hasn't it? It's got to be the Zooms and the Meets and the Google and the technology. I think it has done a really good job. But yeah, I think I want it to go away. I want a blackboard.
Yeah, me too.
Or a game session. I'd love a board game session. They can be so simple and so fun. How about you, Susie? What would you take?
For me, I have discovered Upstrive and I'm very happy. I think it's going to be revolutionary for counselors, for pastoral care. It's going to be so useful. I can't thank enough the people who have made that, and I'm discovering every day something new. And I'm so happy that I'm touching people that I would have never known. That people are knowing.
I hope.
Yeah, virtually, exactly.
Appropriately,
able to chat with them, and they can really now connect and take that thing away that school counselors are not just career counselor or just this, that they can talk about it openly. And like today I just put the chat that how many of you can honestly speak about your mental health to your parents? It was shocking to see the number of children who were saying that they couldn't. Simple open questions like that, and that's great. And then you go and check and you can see, okay, for example, Louise or Danielle or so, and then I would just chat with her and say, oh, Danielle would like to explain, or this is really sad, what's blocking you to go and talk to her? Give them techniques and tools, and there are so many things already inbuilt in that program that they can try, and they can leave it as on their journal. Oh, I tried that last time, it worked very well, I'll try it again. So it's really an amazing tool. It's really worth looking into it.
That's invaluable.
I think as a teacher, Google Classroom has been phenomenal in terms of being able to set work. I think one of the challenges is differentiating, because you have your 30 children and you give work to 30 children, but you can differentiate behind the scenes, not so much visibly in front of all of the children, but being able to have a worksheet, create it in Word, submit that once, but an individual copy go to each child for them to fill in and submit easily, paperless. I think being able to be paperless with the children is phenomenal. So go Google.
When I was at school, to be creative artistically, you had to be able to draw, and you had to be able to make with your hands. But what happens if you're creative but you're not very good at drawing?
Yeah.
And within the world of technology, I use quite a few apps where I can create beautiful images and use images and curate. I have a popular LinkedIn following, and I'm curating images all the time. It's a creative process. There are things which we have access to, which really opens up the creative. I know someone who's an incredibly gifted musician, and he can't play a musical instrument, but he uses technology to create music. It's amazing. I think it's sort of opening up the human experience. We have new instruments we've never had before, new ways of designing and creating, and etc. And I really think that's fantastic. And I'll just say one other thing.
Do you think education will change, or do you think as soon as we open up the borders and we open up the schools and everyone's back in school, do you think we'll just flop back, or do you think it will change?
I think there's a really difficult truth to face. And that is that the people who are in charge of education, who I work with and I have a lot of respect for, are very conservative people. And just to explain what this means, we rightly so give a school, we give the school management to and leadership to people who are a very safe pair of hands. The school principals that we all know are very safe, responsible people. And by goodness, they better be. That's the job. But that type of a person, that type of personality, they're not necessarily visionary or particularly creative or daring. And it's very easy for us to sit outside of that level of school leadership and say, well, I would do this and I would do that. Because, we are a creative bunch. We're in this job for that very reason. We can be all very sort of interpersonal and very sort of expressive and interested in sort of how far we could stretch things. But actually, the education system is very, very, very slow to change for this very reason. Psychologically, our leadership in schools are very, very, very slow to change because of the people who lead them.
Mm-hmm. Not always a bad thing, but yeah.
No, I mean that, yeah, in the positive and the negative.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. We've just about come to the end of our session. It has been really informative, really insightful. I think there were some really amazing points brought up here. For anyone who's listening, Louise, Susie and I host a fortnightly forum called the Inclusion and Wellbeing Forum for practitioners across the world. We have people from Singapore all the way through to Ireland, and everybody is welcome. It's all open, free, voluntary, and we are always looking for contributions from anybody who have experienced something that's worked well, equally sharing challenges, and just getting together to share practice. It's a really good community of practice and connectivity. So please do come along and join us on that. You can follow all of us on LinkedIn. I think each of us are contributing with quite regularly to LinkedIn with updates about inclusive practice or news that's happening. So do come and follow us and join us. And thank you all for coming. And thank you to the presenters for such wonderful insights and contributions. It's been amazing. And I hope everybody has a lovely evening, and hopefully we will see you all at Edutech next year. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you all, and thank you speakers, and thank you, Catherine, for wrapping up basically exactly what I was just about to say. So yeah, thanks again everyone for finishing off this 2-day show. I know that this certainly has left everyone with a lot to think about and a lot to take away as we reflect and look forward to the conversations that will happen again next year. Thanks to all of our speakers, all of our sponsors and exhibitors, and of course the audience for joining us at this virtual edition of Edutech once again. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening, stay safe, and on behalf of Terrapin, goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Ma salama.